does the new movie Inside Out 2 fare when it comes to portraying the regulation of complex emotions and personality development in individuals? As both a mother and childhood trauma therapist, I'm here to share my insights on the film with you. Hi, I'm Annie Wright, a licensed psychotherapist and an expert in childhood trauma recovery. Every bit of my work, including today's episode, Inside Out 2, Perspective from a Trauma Therapist and Mom, is designed to support those who come from childhood trauma backgrounds to have the best adulthood possible. I'm so glad you're here, and I want to welcome you today. If you've ever experienced childhood trauma or even had questions about the impacts your childhood trauma may have on you in adulthood, I encourage you to subscribe to this YouTube channel and sign up for my newsletter in the show notes below. And now, as part of helping you have the best adulthood possible, despite how you may have started out in life, we're going to explore today's topic, Inside Out 2, Perspective from a Trauma Therapist and Mom. Before we dive into today's topic, I just want to say that I truly hope what I share here can be of support to you. And very importantly, please remember, no matter where you're starting from, change is possible. So 2 weeks ago, I shared my reflections about Inside Out when I introduced my 5-year-old daughter to the movie for the first time, and I personally rewatched it again after 9 years. Introducing her to the original movie was the precursor to taking her to my husband and I's favorite movie theater to see Inside Out 2. In today's episode, I'm now going to share my insights and thoughts about the sequel as both a mom and trauma therapist, specifically with a lens as to how this movie might apply to those of us who come from childhood trauma backgrounds, or as we might say, relational trauma backgrounds. Well, first, let me say that I was really happy to see an inclusion of a broader range of emotions represented in Inside Out 2. It's like expanding beyond the primary colors of a paint palette to create a more beautiful, nuanced picture with a broader, more complex range of emotions coming online. But also, realistically, research shows that the onset of more complex and nuanced emotions like anxiety, worry, shame, envy, these emotions can come on much earlier than what was modeled in Inside Out 2 when these emotions were introduced to Riley's emotional control headquarters when she turned 13. Gosh, I would be remiss in saying this, but for any child who experienced relational trauma or any iteration of childhood neglect, abuse, or dysfunction that caused them to feel unsafe or that compromised their dignity, anxiety would have likely come online a heck of a lot sooner than age 13. Indeed, as research suggests, anxiety would have likely been at the helm of the proverbial control panel alongside anger as the dominant feeling states. So that's another thing that struck me as I watched Inside Out 2. Adolescence is inherently painfully uncomfortable. Side note, I could see so many of us middle-aged parents who were there with our kiddos, but who have yet to journey through puberty. Anyways, those parents, we were all squirming uncomfortably at certain moments because we've lived through puberty and we have that experience under our belts, right? We know that adolescence is super uncomfortable and it can be pretty painful and sucky all around. I think we can all agree about that. But now imagine doing that in a family system devoid of the safety and stability Riley's family provided. And imagine how much more painful still that becomes for folks with relational trauma histories. Indeed, research shows that childhood trauma significantly increases the risk of various mental health conditions during adolescence, including depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Adolescents who experienced multiple traumatic events show higher levels of these symptoms as they journey through puberty. I felt deeply uncomfortably seen by that scene where anxiety is losing it trying to manage Riley's critical soccer scrimmage performance. That scene with a hurricane of anxiety whirling around with fear and frozenness at the center, leading to Riley on the verge of a panic attack, will likely be hauntingly familiar for any of us who live with anxiety, full stop, or for those of us who live with anxiety as a result of our trauma histories. Honestly, between that scene and Louisa's anthemic surface pressure in another great film, Encanto, you basically have my autobiography. Can anyone else out there relate? Look, I was so delighted to see the concept of the architecture of personality concretized into an image in Inside Out 2. Research tells us that personality development involves both temperament, or natural tendencies, and character, the individual differences in goals and values shaped by experience. These multidimensional components interact to form a coherent personality structure. So that's why we see one version of Riley's personality architecture early in the movie up in headquarters, replaced by another structure more informed by anxiety later, and then finally a cohesive one that contains both the pre-anxiety and post-anxiety experiences and emotions. Again, bearing in mind those from relational trauma histories, I'd make a case that the architecture of this personality may likely be maladaptively formed in response to our traumatic experiences, even more so than our non-traumatized peers. Perhaps our personality architecture would be more colored by anxiety or fear or sadness than what Riley's ultimate architecture looked like. Finally, one more point that stood out to me. I loved how, at the end of the movie, joy and the other emotions gave anxiety a concrete, time-sensitive job, as well as soothed her via hot tea and a massage chair to occupy her instead of allowing her to run the show with bigger life issues. This is such a smart behavioral intervention tool to use the anxiety and don't pretend it's not there, but instead give it a task and an outlet. In the case of Inside Out 2, it was studying for a Spanish test or something like that. For you, it could be making a list, developing a project plan, etc. Look, as the saying goes, the antidote to anxiety is action. Just don't let it be action that takes over the whole show. Finally, as with my last episode on the original Inside Out and my reflections on it, I did see what I had been hoping for. A blue and red memory ball that captures the nuance of dual emotions being held and experienced at the same time, specifically anger and sadness. And since I personally experience and professionally witness this dual emotion often, I was delighted. Look, I honestly loved this movie. I love the Inside Out series. I just wish Pixar would develop a whole slew of them. I'd particularly love to see a middle-aged mom's inner life expanded upon. But do I think that these movies are the whole of what's needed when it comes to emotional psychoeducation? No. But do I think they do a marvelous job at starting the conversation so more emotional psychoeducation can happen? 100% yes. If you haven't seen Inside Out or Inside Out 2, I hope you'll prioritize doing so. Whether you come from a childhood trauma background or not, they're truly delightful and helpful and validating little films. And now I'd love to hear from you. Did you get to see Inside Out 2 yet? If so, what did you love about this movie? What's one observation you took from the movie that would be helpful for someone from a relational trauma background to hear? If you feel so inclined, leave a message below so that others can benefit from your share and wisdom. You never know who on the other side of the world you might be helping when you share your story. Finally, if you're still not sure if this content applies to you, if you're still not sure if you come from a childhood trauma history or suffer its impacts, I would invite you to take my signature quiz. Do I come from a childhood trauma background? It's a 5-minute, 25-question quiz I created that can be incredibly illuminating and that will point you in the direction of a wide variety of resources that can be of further help to you. Plus, when you take the quiz, you'll be added to my mailing list where you'll receive twice-a-month letters from me sharing original, high-quality pieces with accompanying YouTube videos and audios you can stream, all devoted to the topic of childhood trauma recovery and where I share more about me as a person, my life, and how I'm journeying through my own childhood trauma recovery journey and general adulthood. My newsletters are the only place where I share intimate glimpses into my life, including photos, the resources that are supporting me, the things I've discovered that delight me, words that are uplifting me, the practices that nourish me, and more. So please be sure to sign up for my mailing list whether or not you want to take the quiz. I'll link to both of these things in the show notes below. Finally, thank you so much for listening to me today. I truly hope that even a small part of what I shared today felt helpful to you. If you found value in this information and would like to stay connected with my latest content, please consider giving this episode a like. It helps more than you know. Also, subscribing to my channel and turning on the notification bell ensures you're always up to date with my newest episodes. I appreciate your support and look forward to continuing this journey with you. So thank you. And until next time, please take such good care of yourself. You're so worth it.